Welcome to the American VetFarm Network podcast, a program of Addie's Orchard. The VetFarm Network supports veterans currently serving service members and military families and caregivers who are exploring farming or getting their beginning farm business started. And while we're often here talking about obtaining land, farmers markets, business planning, and production, farming also depends on people having strong support around them. Today we're joined by Cheree Tham, a licensed clinical social worker, co-founder and chief of programs and initiatives at America's Warrior Partnership, and Bronwyn Leitch, outreach specialist with Indy Warrior Partnership. America's Warrior Partnership works with communities to support veterans, their families, and caregivers before crisis occurs. Indy Warrior Partnership brings that community-based support to veterans and families in Indiana. Today we'll talk about veteran support at the community level, why connection matters, and how ag organizations can be better partners in helping veterans and their families find the right resources.
Well, thanks for joining us today. And Cheree, let's start with you. For listeners who might not know about America's Warrior Partnership, how do you describe the work and what makes this community-based approach different?
Well, America's Warrior Partnership started as a national organization back in 2013. But before I talk about the story of that as a national organization, we started as a local community based organization in the greater part of Augusta, Georgia. And myself and the other co founder, president, and CEO, Jim Lorraine, who left the Care Coalition in Tampa, had created a model that he wanted to implement with veterans. So in 2011, we implemented that model in the greater Augusta, Georgia area. From that, we were able to demonstrate a lot of metrics related to veterans, improvement in housing conditions, homeless veterans housed, enrollment in the VA, benefit claims. Basically, if you think of anything and everything from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's what we worked on. We found the veterans in the community and we connected them to the resources that were there. Our model is to find the veterans in the community, find the partners in the community to connect them to each other, to connect, to educate our veterans on their earned benefits, to educate our partners, direct service providers, on what veterans are looking for, to advocate on behalf of the veterans, and to advocate on behalf of the community where we see gaps that direct service providers could be able to improve on their services that they're doing for the veterans in their community, and then to collaborate with everyone. In 2013, because of the metrics that we were able to obtain through that model, we were asked to go national. So in 2013, we became America's Warrior Partnership. And effectively today, we currently have 5 locations that we are geographically located in. We have Indianapolis, we have the state of Alaska, Permian Basin, which is Hobbs, New Mexico, Midland, Odessa, Texas, that area, the Panhandle of Florida, and the Navajo Nation. For the areas that we aren't able to implement that locally, we have a network. And in our network, if folks need services, they can reach out to the AWP network and be connected to services locally. If we cannot find those services locally, then we have relationships with national partners that we can push the resource down to the veteran on the local level.
And our other guest today, Bronwyn, do you want to share, do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your background and as a veteran, kind of how you got into doing this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I served in the Canadian Armed Forces as an artillery officer. I was a senior technical officer on a gun line, which was really cool, explosive, exciting, if you will. But I actually also grew up in a military family. My father served as a sergeant major. My mom was a sergeant. So it had kind of always been a part of my lifestyle, constantly moving around, seeing different parts of the province, seeing different parts of the country, being without my dad for weekends or sometimes whole weeks at a time, depending on just like a small tasking even that he'd be doing. So he was a reservist, so he also worked full time as a police officer. So I'm speaking to his reserve service. But anyways, I joined the military, the Canadian Armed Forces, when I was 18. Served 6 years. I met my husband during my time in service, who was in the United States Marine Corps. Fast forward through COVID and all of that craziness, I feel like I've kind of seen every different perspective of the target audience in which we serve firsthand, which is really cool because when we got married, I immigrated to the US, and then I endured that reintegration process myself, especially as a female having served. I went from this super awesome job where this was my entire life from basically I was a little girl up until now. And then I was living in a strange country where I didn't know anyone and didn't really have anyone near me that had a lot in common other than my husband. So that's when I found America's Warrior Partnership and Indy's Warrior Partnership. The position was honestly just listed online, and I jumped all over it because there is just I don't even want to say it's part of my heart. It's kind of my whole heart. This community, I thought, what an incredible way to kind of continue my service, but also I feel like I was able to just connect with the community that I would be able to like truly authentically from my heart connect with them because I had experienced not only being a child, but being an actively serving member, seeing men and women around me go through their own kind of hardship during service, after service, being the spouse of a veteran, and then going through that reintegration process myself, becoming a mom, being at home. So yeah, that's essentially in very brief summary how I entered the world of IWP and therefore AWP. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And I'm grateful that I'm able to kind of continue this legacy, if you will, that's been my life.
That's awesome. Well, and I know I met you at our last Indianapolis event and saw you there tabling and sharing information about the program. And what does it look like your kind of day to day on the ground services that you're providing in sort of central Indiana? And how does that outreach, how does that look? How are you taking the programs and kind of implementing them locally?
Yeah, so honestly, I try to attend as many different events, whether they're veteran centered or not, because veterans are everywhere in the community. They don't exactly like sometimes you see them walking around with a baseball cap and they served in the area of Vietnam or the era of Vietnam, and that's awesome, but not all of them have a name tag that says, "Hi, I am a veteran." So we really diligently try to meet them where they are in their everyday lives, whether it's in their workplace, whether it's at a resource fair. I might be going to a coffee group or some kind of support group or a horsemanship lesson down in Bloomington. So truly my day to day differs from one day to the next. It's always very exciting, but ideally I try, and I know that the rest of the staff, particularly outreach, tries to meet veterans where they are in the community, where they are in their lives. So it could be something as casual. Last night we went to this phenomenal event with retired Colonel Ricker, where there was just wings and people hanging out, and we were able to pass out some, I like to call it opportunities for morale, which was a really awesome time to engage with our local veterans, but also I'll sometimes be at a resource fair and have a really intense dialogue with someone who wasn't exactly expecting to come across me and my table and our services that we have to offer. So it's not written all over someone's face, or they're not wearing it on a t-shirt that they're a veteran or the spouse of a veteran or the caregiver of a veteran, and they're not necessarily holding up a sign that says, "Hi, I need help." So until I make myself extremely visible in the community, regardless of where I am, even if I'm at a local gym, then I'm trying to make it very, very obvious that, hey, I want to make a genuine, authentic connection with you. So I know that sounds kind of vague, but like I said, my day to day is very, very different from one day to the next. But I do try to, this is a frequently used saying, get my boots on the ground, um, just so that I can
Absolutely.
accomplish that.
Absolutely. And Cheree, what was sort of the um, background of what you guys wanted when you started this partnership and program? What were you seeing that really pulled on your heartstrings and made this a passion project for you?
For me personally, I did not serve in the military, and this is my way of serving those who did serve. As an organization, as I said, our president and CEO had created the Care Coalition for the soft community, um, and then came and started what was known as Augusta Warrior Project back in 2011 and implemented that model. And it was for us as an organization to you don't know what you don't know, right? And so our veterans, while in service, they they know where they're supposed to be, they know what their role is, they know what their job is, they know all of those things. And then they come into the community, and there's a bridge, right? And we have lots of phenomenal programs, national programs and community-based programs that are there for them. But when you have over 44,000 organizations that is what they want to do, how is that veteran to navigate that? So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create a clearinghouse to where for the veteran, they don't have to figure out which programs they're eligible for and which ones they're not. For the national and local organizations, to be able to have a conversation with a veteran and determine what they're looking for, and to say to the partner, this person fits within your program, I'm referring them to you, which helps that partner to be able to do more with the folks that they're serving. So collaborating in that regard.
And for our Vet Farm Network audience, veterans in farming, Addie's Orchard friends, many are drawn to farming because they want purpose or independence or land ownership, after moving around a lot in the service and maybe just a different pace of life. But the reality is farming is very stressful or can be at times. The suicide rate is really high in agriculture alone, in the civilian community. And do you have any tips for sort of the veteran farmer community? In some ways, there's some really wonderful built-in services potentially that might be maybe more accessible for a veteran farmer than a civilian farmer, with the VA healthcare system. But are there any sort of ways that you can suggest that people might stay connected just in case they ever need those resources, and how they could use your services to help locate them?
Yeah, so for all you veterans, I want your population to know that there are multiple groups that are working with veterans in farming, and we are all getting together to determine how we can support the population. The difficulty in lies, and this is what we have been trying to do with other partners, is when you're farming, you're in more rural areas. And being in rural areas, that's not necessarily where all the traditional resources are. So it's thinking through, how do we how do we as direct service providers, as communities, bring the support to the rural communities, particularly, this population, and what does that look like? It could be that it's remote more, or telemental health, or it could be that it could be a challenge of the internet and not being able to access that. So, Katie, I don't have the answer for you, but I can tell you this has been a very, very top conversation for our organization and other organizations that do provide for the farming community, um, of us all figuring out where we're going to get that. I will also tell you, and Bronwyn touched on this. We have a concept, one size fits one. So any of your folks that reach out to us are going to be supported as an individual, and we will cater the support package to that individual where they are.
Wow, that's fantastic. Um, so Bronwyn, if someone reached out to you today, well, first off, how would they do that? And then, especially for our Indiana listeners, what would that follow-up look like? How does sort of a partnership with the individual start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So on an individual basis, it really depends on how we kind of make that first contact. So let's say, for example, they see me in the community, we meet, we have a dialogue, and I explain, hey, this is what we have to offer. Should you ever need anything? Firstly, I want them to know that my approach is very warm and welcoming, and I want them to know that we're not just going to throw them to the wolves and leave them hanging there. I always reinforce the fact that we will continue to follow up with them and advocate on their behalf with whatever resource that we connect them to. So, in the event that they do need something, within that one-on-one dialogue that I'm having, I'm getting their information because I want to make that firsthand contact with them, but also continue that conversation. So then I'll reach out through an email or a phone call myself and I'll say, hey, it was great meeting you. This is how you get connected. And then I'll send them a link in which they can get directly involved with our support team. Sometimes they might find us online on our website directly. Sorry, I've got a little boy just outside of my door right now. On our website directly, there's a button, indywarriorpartnership.org on the top right-hand side. You can request support. That'll get you directly involved with our intake team. We're also encouraging an initiative called Know a Vet, Tell a Vet. So even if you don't know about someone who needs support initially at that very moment, of course, we want to encourage them to get involved with us and to stay connected with us. And should we have an event coming up or a time where we're out in the community actively connecting with you, we want people to be aware of that in advance. So through our Know a Vet, Tell a Vet initiative, Cheree might want to speak further to this as well. I'm not sure. I'll just kind of summarize it. We have a QR code. You can find it on any of our socials. You can find it on our website, and you can become a champion. So if you scan that QR code, then that's your way of essentially volunteering with us. And then your goal is to meet 5, 10, 20 other veterans, veteran family members or supporters, and then they can scan your QR code. And while it doesn't sound like that difficult of a task for that individual, it is so good for spreading the word that is IWP and America's Warrior Partnership. So you scan your QR code and you can become a champion that way. So you don't necessarily need to request support through us in order to get involved, to get engaged, but you can become a champion with us. And it's kind of a little incentivized, well, not, it's not little, but it's an incentivized program that we've got going just to keep people in the loop as to what we're doing and what kind of things that we are looking to accomplish, because we can't just do it on our own. We have to not only lean on fellow veterans to upbring other veterans, but also, yes, their family members. We want to support their family members, their caregivers. We want to support their family caregivers, but also we need to rely on those community partners. We need to rely on the general population to support and uplift those who are in need, especially in our major effort to avoid crisis altogether. So hopefully that kind of summarizes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cheree, what events are coming up, like the Warrior Symposium or other events around the nation that might be of interest to our listeners?
Well, we have our big event that is our annual symposium that is going to be in Washington, D.C. this year. It's August 6th and 7th. You can go to America's Warrior Partnership Annual Symposium and you will see that we are encouraging community partners to register. We have a sponsorship package, which we can waive all of your fees for coming to the symposium, not travel costs, but your registration fees. So I encourage organizations who want to learn more about what not only America's Warrior Partnership is doing, but what other partners are doing and networking with folks like-minded. It's a really great event, and you can apply for a sponsorship on America's Warrior Partnership Symposium.
That is awesome. And I saw too, there's a bunch of different events, like there's a golf fundraiser event that's happening, a bunch of charity golf events. And then I saw something that looked fun, the Ounces Make Pounds, at Broad Ripple Park on September 5th. That looked pretty fun. Is a 5 mile run? Is that what it is, Bronwyn?
It's a ruck march. So if you want for me to speak to that, I absolutely can,
Absolutely.
especially for our Indiana veterans and supporters. So this one is certainly near and dear to my heart. September is the month of suicide prevention. And I thought, what an awesome way it does take place on September 5th of this year. I would love to make this an annual event. However, it's essentially a reverent ruck march. It's just shy of 5 miles along the Monon Trail. We finish off at Broad Ripple Park, and then friends and family of any of the participants are invited to come and join us for a barbecue. And we'll just have an opportunity to hang out, mingle, have some great conversations, have a little grill out. But it's to just raise awareness of our community, to commemorate those who have served, and to just bring awareness to something that is very, very serious, and to, uh, of course, bring awareness about IWP, but show that there's a lot of love to go around. So why not do it in a way that is not only nostalgic, but also a great chance for people to meet each other, and continue to build their community, in a personal way.
And I'll definitely make sure to share that on our Veterans and Farming Facebook page, and hopefully we'll get some of the VIF community out to that. Before we sign off, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And again, we will put in the show notes the website links, just so it's easy for people to find. And yeah, before we go, is there anything else that you want to cover about the organization?
I do want to speak to your viewers. You are not alone. I want you to know that you would never be alone, and there is just finding the right door. And we would love to help you if you need that right door, and we can help navigate that for you. So just know that you are not alone.
Cheree and Bronwyn, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective on community-based veteran support, local outreach, and the importance of supporting our veteran community. For listeners who want to learn more about America's Warrior Partnership or Indy Warrior Partnership, we'll include those links in the show. You can also go to our Facebook page. We recently just shared a couple of their posts. For veterans, service members, and military families who are exploring farming or beginning farm businesses started, the VetFarm Network offers one-on-one farm coaching and technical assistance to help you think through your goals, resources, next step. We also want to invite you to our VetFarm Network Live office hours, which is going to be July 9th. We're going to be talking about Christmas tree farming, which is going to be exciting. And you're welcome to join us, whether you're considering Christmas trees or not. You just want to listen in, that's fine. And we're also going to be adding to our library here. You can find our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple iTunes.